It's Friday, and you know what that means. We have another awesome guest, and I'm very excited to bring the wonderful Lee Jackson onto the show today. So one of the things that I've heard recently, little birdies have told me, little poddy birdies in particular, have explained that they want to hear more about what it takes to be a professional speaker. Now, I have a couple of episodes in mind for this and a couple of different people that I want to bring on and talk about it. But the reason I have a couple of different people that I want to bring on to talk about it is two reasons. One is because there are different types of speakers. And one of the reasons I'm so excited to have Leon today is that he is a motivational speaker. And he actually caters for different audiences, and he speaks in environments that are potentially hostile. So he speaks in environments like prison. He speaks to a multitude of age ranges, so youths and adults. And he speaks about a lot of practical stuff. Okay, he's well known for his trademark "get good at," and then followed by work or business or all that kind of stuff. And he's actually a really, really interesting guy. But I have got a few episodes on what it takes to become a professional speaker. And I had a really interesting conversation with Lee about this. And we've touched on a few different areas today, which are really exciting for me, because I think sometimes we can get caught up in the glamour of speaking. And what I really love about Lee and his perspective on becoming a speaker is that it's not all about the lights and the jazz hands and the adoring fans. That was unintentionally rhyming, and just, magic happened. And it's not all about that. It's about the value that you're genuinely giving to other people, and how you're helping them transform, not just through the duration of your talk and the time that you're on stage, but actually how they use that information afterwards to really go ahead and do amazing things. So that's our conversation today. I'm very excited about it. I hope you enjoy it. And as always, if you do, please feel free to head over onto social media and let us know what you felt about today's conversation. Or you can go on iTunes. I know, retro, but if you would like, you can leave a little review on iTunes and just let me know how the episode was for you today. Enjoy it, and I will catch up with you on Monday. Okay, Poddies, how exciting is this? I officially have my third Northerner on the podcast, which I'm very excited about. So welcome, Lee, and welcome to Smart Leader Sell.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to, bring up that demographic and get a Northerner on the show. That's always nice.
Taking one for the entire north of England. And I was saying to one of the guys on my team earlier, I was like, oh, he's on the podcast today. And we were having a little squiz around your website. And I was like, oh, I wonder where he's from in the north. And then I saw it and I was like, Lee from Leeds. And I had this moment where I did a northern impression. It was terrible, so I'm not going to do it for everybody. But I had that moment where do you ever find that people, when they find out that you're from Leeds, they're like, oh, Leeds. And they do a really bad accent, just like that I said I wasn't going to do.
Yeah, they have a bad accent, or they ask me things like, do you have electricity? Those kind of things. So you kind
that's
of,
something that you guys are still missing?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's all right. I just quietly smile. Whenever I'm speaking on a stage, and if I work in London quite a lot, obviously it's about 2 hours 20 on a train. It's not too far. I always say the further south I go, the more northern I become.
Yeah.
So I kind of play on my northernness a little bit. But I guess some of your listeners are from America, from different countries. So it's the north of England we're talking about, just so you know. So.
We have quite a strong northern contingent. I'm forever getting emails from people who are like, Jess, you're talking about the weather being really cold, and down there it's only like in the 10-degree remit, and up here it's like -2, and you need to really stop that, because we kind of feel like you're a southern Jessie. So I need to get out of that hang of the weather. But really, really excited to have you on today. Really excited to talk about something that my audience are really interested in, which is this whole speaking piece, because we have lots of people in my audience who they're really interested in sharing their message in a bigger way and making more impact. And obviously speaking is one of the I would say, best and easiest ways to do that and get multiple people involved in a journey, making impacts at one time. So tell us how you fell into the whole motivational speaking and presentation coaching piece.
Yeah, well, a lot of people in my industry have had a corporate career,
Mm.
and they, sometimes they've made a bit of money and then they get a bit bored of that and they think, oh, I know what, I'll be an expert in my chosen field, sales, marketing, whatever, neurology, whatever it is, And my route is very, very different. So I was actually a youth worker. So I used to run a youth work charity in my city. And my background is I worked with young people most of my life. So in 1994, I sort of set up a charity in Leeds. But actually that charity was basically me going into schools doing talks. So it wasn't a business, it was a charity. But my first week at school, my first week on my job, basically, the head teacher took me into the assembly hall, and there was 600 teenagers sat on the floor in this old-fashioned school in Leeds. And the head teacher went, right, off you go. You've got 10 minutes. Go and chat to that lot. So that was my that was my first week at work, basically, in that role. So I thought, I better get good at this pretty quickly, otherwise I'm going to get eaten alive here by these teenagers.
That's a baptism of fire, because teenagers do not have that much patience
Well,
at all.
people, when I do presentation coaching, people get nervous about, if I'm working with executives or leaders in public or private sector, they say, I'm really nervous about this talk. And secretly inside, I'm just kind of laughing. I'm going, you need to understand that if you're doing a talk in business, at least everyone's paid to sit there.
Mm.
Like, the difference is in schools is that they don't want to be there. So 98% of kids go to school and 98% of them don't want to be there. Do you know what I mean? So you've got that 3 minutes to kind of grab them, really. And if you don't grab them in that first 3 minutes, they're off with the fairies somewhere thinking about something else and stuff. Yeah. So baptism by fire is a good analogy, I guess, really.
One of the things that people are always saying to me is, did you ever plan to have your own business? And I always say, no, I fell into it through a series of circumstances. I fell into running this business, and I'm really fortunate that I like it and that it does what it's supposed to do, and it makes money, and I get to impact people and all that kind of cool stuff. But I think most people feel like entrepreneurship is a vocation, and it kind of sounds like you've been quite similar to me in that you found the vocation in the working with kids bit, and then it's migrated out to doing the work that you do today.
Yeah, so I still work with kids, teenagers a little bit, about 20% of my work. The rest is with adults. And I think I'll always work in schools at some point because it's in my blood, really, But the reality is when that came to an end at the charity, I always tell people the stories that I just sat down one day and I just thought, what is it that I do best? And can I make money doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've got lots of friends who've probably might be much more stable financially than I am. They have had in inverted commas, a proper job for many, many years, and they've got a solid pension and all this kind of stuff. But you know what? They're bored senseless, and they live for their 2-week holiday a year. And I thought, I just don't want to live my life like that. I don't want to live my life. Well, why should I why should I just take the salary and then kind of hate my job? I thought, if I can get paid for what I do best, what a privilege that is. And 90% of people in the UK probably don't get to do that,
It's always interesting, isn't it? And I think it also comes down to priorities. And I think there's a common theme with entrepreneurs is that we're prepared to risk quite a lot to achieve a life goal that we want. And, a lot of my friends are still in corporate, and they always say, oh, but Jess, isn't it scary? And do you ever worry that your business is going to fail? And I always say to them, well, if my business failed tomorrow, I'd go and get a job in a supermarket and I just build it back up again, because there are so many things that it gives that I wouldn't get in a corporate. And I think there's always a feeling, or there has been, particularly over the last 10 years, I'd say, from me leaving corporate to now, that actually jobs aren't that stable anymore. Your company, and we're seeing a huge trend in this at the moment. Big companies, particularly in the UK, we're seeing a lot of big companies who've been established for years and years and years, they're just closing overnight and people are losing jobs. And so I don't think there's really any such thing as stability anymore necessarily in that market.
Yeah. Well, I think it's false stability as well.
Mm.
I think, you know, my first job was in the private sector at a solicitor's. That was kind of my first kind of coming out of sixth form kind of job. You know, I did it to get some money, and I was DJing and doing youth work on the weekends. You know, so it just paid my lifestyle, I guess. Then I moved to the public sector, and I worked in the Crown Court in Leeds. I worked in sort of the legal sector. Just again, it was a job. It was a 9 to 5. It earned some money, so I could do the things that I loved, which was DJing and hip hop and that kind of thing. But I was amazed in those jobs at how much kind of faith they had in their employers. Because if you strip down, I mean, if people are listening from abroad, they'll have different rules. But if you strip down to even the public sector, if you become really ill, they'll pay you for 3 months full-time pay, most likely. Then you'll go down to half pay. And then after 6 months, it's no pay. And that is a really good deal these days. Many companies do not have those deals. So this whole idea of your friends saying, isn't it scary? If they scratch the surface, they've only got 3 months cushion and that's kind of it. And of course, they might even, and if a company goes bust and then they're in the private sector, they won't even get a redundancy. They'll just get, you know, a box and off you go kind of thing. That's, you know, I was hearing the other day of someone I know who was running several businesses. They're not going very well. And, you know, the guy he's just kind of running away from it, really. And those businesses will just fail, and the people who are employed in it will just suddenly stop getting their money. It's as simple as that. So we have to be careful in life that we don't put our faith in something that isn't actually worthy, that is like a paper house, not a solid rock. Do you know what I mean?
And that's so interesting, because one of the things that you do is you are, and for me, motivational speaker is always a hard term, because you get some people who say they're a motivational speaker and are not really massively motivational. It's the honest truth, isn't it? Right. But
Yeah.
as we were looking at your speaker reel and we were looking at the kind of things that you talked about, I was like, oh, it's actually actionable. You know, these are practical things people can take away. So it's not just the kind of get up and go, you know, raise the roof attitude. It's actually, okay, this is what you could be doing. So was that like a conscious decision on your part to not just be kind of all bells or whistles, jazz hands, flashlights, all that kind of stuff, and to actually give people something that they can take and use after the talk is done?
Yeah, I think I think I have several things. One is that I've learned to be myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk about that more maybe later on, but I can't be anyone else. I'm not what I would go in the industry. We have people I would call yeehaw speakers. You know, they put their hand in the air, yeehaw.
Yeah.
Everything will be fine. Everything will be roses. Just set a big goal, believe in yourself, and it's nonsense. There's no research to back up that stuff. So I'm a mix of a sort of northern English speaker telling it like it is, but really trying to help people. So I tend to bust myths quite a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I quite enjoy that, but also do lots of research. So I've just launched last year my sort of program, Get Good at Work, which is designed specifically for staff away days and staff conferences. And I deliberately, I'm just really honest. So I developed this over years, and so I do about 7 minutes in this talk about email, and it sounds like the most boring thing in the world. But when I started researching it and started mentioning it in my talks, I realized that most people's jobs are obsessed by email, and they spend hours a week writing emails that they don't need to do. So it was a real practical thing. It's like, instead of just giving them, you know, some motivational thing that might not last an hour, I actually say, well, how would you like to save, you know, 4 hours a week in your working week?
Mm-hmm.
How would you like to save a couple of hours a day? If you write long emails, let me tell you a technique that helps you to find back some of your time. And all of a sudden, like, people are like, oh, I've never thought about that before. So what I love to do is to get people in a room, whether it's kids in a school or people in a business conference, and I like to press pause. I talk about, let's just press pause on your work, because most people are so busy, they never actually get time to reflect on what they're doing and why they do it. So I just get them to press pause, and we say, well, why do you write long emails? Why do you spend an hour writing an email to someone who's 3 desks away from you? Why is that? And why are you wasting your time doing that? Let me explain to you. There's a thing called a telephone, or you can go up and have a chat with that person, you know. And I deliberately talk about that, the whys and the hows, and as I call the keeping on going, which is the resilience piece, really, because everyone's desperate for resilience tips, really, you know.
So in a way, it's more like your key motivators behind why you do something and harnessing those to get better results, as opposed to motivational in the kind of rah-rah sense of the word, or yeehaw sense of the word.
Yeah. There's different sorts of. I mean, the speakers fall into different categories. One category is inspirational speaker. An inspirational speaker, I would say, is someone who's had a bad life story that they get over, so they tell that story. A motivational speaker, well, I would call myself that, is because that's what people Google. Just honest, Jessica, you know, that's just, we have to
I
call
like
ourselves
it.
what people Google, right?
Yeah.
And if you can think of a better phrase, then professional speaker sounds boring. Inspirational speaker, I'm not, because I was never in an orphanage and I didn't have a terrible childhood. My mum and dad were quite nice. So I've
Damn
got,
them. How dare
well,
they be?
well, when I, when I first got in the industry, I was thinking, there was a moment in me, I was thinking, yeah, I wish something really bad had happened to me when I was little, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm just being myself in that process, and just saying, look, here's things I've researched, here's things I know that work with the hundreds and thousands of people that I've spoken to over the years. You know, this might help you. And if I go in with that attitude, then people, particularly in the UK, people don't like speakers like me because they think they're going to come with all the answers. So I deflate all that pretty quickly and say, look, I'm just a bloke from Leeds that found out some helpful stuff. Take it or leave it. And I always get them to put their hands up towards the end of the talk. And I say, put your hands up if you've learned something new today. And usually I get everyone putting their hand up, you know, and that's just wonderful. Because at the beginning, they had their arms folded and they were thinking, oh, no, here we go. He's going to run around telling me to believe in myself more, and then everything will be fine. And yeah, I'm not a snake oil salesman. I am just being myself and sharing the thoughts and content that I've got, really.
I think it is quite hard, because I think people have, and it's always interesting to me because I go to lots of events and I speak at a bunch of events, and I participate as an attendee at a bunch of events. And I think one of the saddest things that I see is perhaps when people go to an event and they get really fired up about the talks, and they'll go, oh my God, I had this amazing person speak and it was just phenomenal and I feel so inspired. And then they go away and, 2 or 3 weeks later, you say to them, well, what did you do from that? And they're like, oh, nothing. I've been so busy and I've had so much on. So, is there an art to making your talks actionable in a way that actually makes people take action after the talk is done? Because obviously we have these kind of peaks of performance, if you like, and immediately after the talk, everyone's like, right, I've got my notebook, I've written 5 pages of notes and I can't wait. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, oh my goodness, I love to do all those things, but actually life happened, got to pick the kids up, got to walk the dog, got to do all this stuff. And they haven't actually actioned it. Do you think it's a problem with the talks, or do you think it's, something that we could be doing better as speakers? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. I think it's a combination of several things. I think, first of all, sometimes it's the speaker. So when I do my presentation skills courses or coach people, I ask them to think of a few things. One is that the audience is screaming at you, what's in it for me? So whenever an audience sits there, they're screaming that at you. So you've got to answer that question pretty quickly. You've got to tell them what's in it for them. And before you even do any planning in your talk, you've got to understand what's in it for them. But then you've got to get to the point where you say, if they only took away one thing from this talk, what's the one thing I want them to take away? And you have to, if you never get to that point, that's why we have death by PowerPoint. Because what people do is they tell you everything they know about sales, say, your subject, everything you know about online sales or whatever, and people will just give you, and that's just such a boring talk. But when you think, what's the one thing or 3 things at the most do you want them to walk away with? it changes the way you plan, it changes the way you deliver, and also people know that you've done your homework and you're not just chatting, and you've actually made a point. You know what I mean? Something memorable, really.
I think it's also, and this is something I say on the podcast all the time, so you guys have to forgive me, but it's not about information. What you're saying there about, it's not just about cramming the talk full of every piece of information you've ever learned about something, because people ultimately aren't paying for that. They're paying for implementation. They're paying for inspiration. They're paying to, feel like they've changed in some way after that 45 minutes or hour that you've been on the stage. And that makes a huge difference. And it also makes a huge difference to how often you get booked in the future, because like you and I were saying before we started recording, right, one of the things that I've noticed about speaker circuits, certainly in the UK, in the kind of online business industry and the conferences that I attend, is that we see the similar speakers. They pop up again and again, and I'm one of those irritating people that I seem to be on this circuit now, which is great for me. Love it. Thank you for everybody who's booking me for stuff. But also it makes it quite difficult if you're somebody who's new to the circuit to get in. And really, when you do get in, you have that one opportunity to create this really interesting, engaging talk. And so it can be really tempting to fill it full of information and be like, look at all this great stuff that I know and that you can take away, because you want people to walk away and go, oh my God, doesn't Jess know tons about this? And in reality, that's not going to help you get booked for next time, because everyone's just like, well, could have Googled that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you're a speaker, your job is to filter the information you have in your head for your audience. So a speaker is a filter, and we have to say, okay, this is everything I know about sales, but here's the 3 bits of stuff I'm actually going to give them. But obviously, we can't be held as a speaker or a trainer or whatever. You can't be held responsible if someone doesn't implement something. As the phrase goes, when a student is ready, the teacher will appear. They have to be in the right frame of mind, the right lifestyle. They have to, because some people will listen to this podcast in the car. Some of them are listening while they're in the bath. Some of them are listening focused right now at their desk with a notepad. And they have different kind of listeners, and they're all motivated differently. Do you know what I mean? And you've got to try and work out what you can do as a speaker to make it clear for them. But also, we're not responsible for what other people do with that information. That is up to them, and that's where intrinsic motivation comes, internal motivation comes into play. What gets you out of bed on a morning? What do you enjoy? Because if you haven't worked that out, like if someone's listening to this and they're thinking about a new career, maybe in sales or online marketing or something, if they're not passionate about it, then why do it? Because you're not going to get out of bed to do it. People need to be a little bit careful that they choose the right thing for them as well. Otherwise, it's a sticking plaster all the time, isn't it?
Well, it's also an interesting point, because, there are so many people that I meet in my line of work who say, Jess, I want to be a speaker. I want to be the next Tony Robbins, or, whoever's big in the world. And I always say to people, it took Tony Robbins quite a long time to become the speaker that he is now, and to be able to fill stadiums and do that kind of thing. And sometimes, I say to people, is it that you actually really want to speak? Because speaking is a skill in of itself. You have to work hard. I mean, you were the president of the Professional Speakers Association. That's not an easy job by any means, and it's something that you do have to work at as a craft, as a skill. Sometimes I think that people can get caught up so much in, I see other people speaking who are famous, so I should too, because that's almost how I'm going to get there. And I mean, I would argue that, whilst both of us are respected professionals in our fields, I'm not walking down the street and going to my local co-op and people are like, oh my God, are you Jessica? Like, it's only ever happened in an airport once. and that's the thing. But I look at it and I'm like, look, I have a podcast, I'm talking to people regularly, I'm speaking on these things, but at no point am I Tony Robbins. I'm not going to have to worry about pulling my baseball cap down in public situations just in case fans mob me and want my autograph. So, is there a certain element to becoming a good speaker that you actually have to want to hone the craft and do it for a genuine reason other than the kind of fame that we see when people get to that elevated level.
Yeah, there's a friend of mine called Donna from the States. She's a great speaker, works with brilliant people. And she came to the Professional Speaking Association, the PSA, as we call it, to the conference a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago. And she did a Q&A, and she stood on the stage, and she pointed to the stage, and she says, the problem with this is it's crack cocaine. And and everyone was like, where are you going with this, Donna? She says, the problem with this is the stage is like crack cocaine to some of you. Mm-hmm. If you fall in love with being on the stage, then you don't give, then it's about you and not your audience. And so you don't give that value to your audience. If some people want to be famous. That's not really something I want to be particularly. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That doesn't bother me at all. It's not my goal, not my intention. But some people just fall in love with what they see, that Instagram lifestyle of a speaker, staged lights and people shaking your hand afterwards. If you fall in love with that, you'll be the worst speaker in the world. This is about getting on your feet in little rooms. I did a gig at a big expo thing. Spoke on the main stage in London. I think it was at Excel Centre in London, big old hospitality show, something like that. And I did a side seminar afterwards. So I was on the stage and it was full. I don't know, there was 100 odd people there, and it was great fun, loads of Q&As, brilliant. And then they put me on, can you do a little seminar, a little coaching group? And this was on in the afternoon. So me and another professional speaker sat there in this open plan area waiting for people to come to our masterclass thing. And no one showed up. Like both of us were sat there looking at each other going, yeah, great gig this, isn't it?
I'd have been like, that's awesome. Free coffee all afternoon.
Oh yeah, it's cool. We were laughing about it. But but the reality is people not showing up. You're not going to see that on my Instagram, are you? You might see a bit more into me, but you're not going to see it. You're going to see the big stage. You're going to see the big stuff, and you don't see the hard work. I'm speaking at a fellow speaker called Joy Marsden, who's the current president of PSA. She passed away a couple of weeks ago, all very suddenly. And I've just spent almost 2 days writing a 5-minute tribute speech for her funeral. But I'm telling you now, not because I want any kind of plaudit. I'm just saying, I wasn't putting that on social media. You haven't seen me tearing my hair out for 2 days. What you'll see is me looking quite smart, delivering a 5-minute eulogy. Mm. You don't see the work that gone into it. You don't see the stories that I've collected and then got rid of, and because we only see the shiny stuff, right?
And that's the interesting thing. It's funny because a friend of mine, she put on Facebook a few days ago, she does CrossFit, which I'm very impressed by because just lifting weights probably not going to happen with the amount of chocolate that I consume. But she does CrossFit, and she did this 300-pound deadlift. And I was looking at it, quite frankly, amazed, thinking, Jesus, I'm never now going to hack her off because clearly she can take me. But in her post, she said, this is me doing this 300-pound deadlift, which is amazing. And in the PS, she put, but what you didn't see was the 6 months of hard work and the tears and the sweat that it took me to get there. And I think, we are all guilty of that. And I think that sometimes speaking, like you say, has this glamorous edge, and people don't always realize what you have to do to get there. They don't realize that you have to hone the craft. They don't realize you're going to have to send out a bunch of pitches and get told by event organizers, no, sorry, we're not going to take you because perhaps you don't have the audience size that we're looking for, or you don't have a speaker reel yet. And it can feel quite challenging. So it's something you really have to want to do to make it happen. Otherwise, the bigger stages are going to kind of say, well, no, why should we take you? It's the risk.
And you've got to ask yourself if you want to be a speaker, is it part of if it's an ego thing, then, go and speak at the Women's Institute, become an actor if you want, you can do that. If it's related to your business, then you need to ask yourself the question, what does it bring to my business?
Mm.
So some people speak for fees. So I speak for fees on the whole. I do occasionally no fee gigs, but that's when I choose or there's a big audience or something. But on the whole, I speak for fees. But there is a business model where you speak completely for free in order to get coaching clients or to build your online database or whatever. So as long as you know the reason why you're doing it, then go for it. Then you might as well go for it. But if you're doing it to feel nice about yourself, or you're doing it for some kind of self-esteem reason, it's probably not the industry that you want to be in, because it's a really tough industry and people give you unsolicited feedback. And
Yeah.
and you'll know, Jess, at a conference there's always like three or four people wanting to chat to you afterwards. Usually, if you're any good, there's three or four people, and you're just praying that they're all just want to say something nice, because sometimes the fourth person is, can I just have a word, Lee? But I don't want to be pedantic, but I'm not sure what you said there. And so that's why I often offer at the end of my talks, have you got any questions? Do you disagree with me? Do you want to challenge me? Because I think your Q&A is when your expertise comes out, actually, not in your talk.
And that's a really interesting point, because I think it's for some people, they feel like the talk is what gives them the credibility. But the reality is, a talk, like you're saying about the 5-minute eulogy, that's something you'll prepare for days and days, sometimes weeks, depending on how big the gig is. And so you'll have rehearsed it, you know what's coming next, you know how you want to deliver it. A Q&A, when you get a really tough question, is when you have to really throw your brain behind it and work out how you can communicate in the easiest and most effective way to somebody the answer to their question and make it relevant for everybody else in the audience. And that's quite hard.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to, I teach people never to do the Q&A at the end. So do it towards the end. So you're 98% finish your talk. So do a Q&A if you've got time. Never overrun, by the way. Never, ever, ever overrun. Even if the person before you was overrun, you get back on time, because then the meeting planner will remember you forever and a day, and they'll book you again. So once you finish the Q&A, have a couple of sentences or a little gag or a reminder or a closing part to your talk, and then that brings them, then you've taken control of that again. The audience leaves a little bit happier. Mm-hmm. So I've got a little gag that I often do at the end of my talks, a little sight gag, a little funny thing, and I say thank you, because I never end, because if you end with a Q&A, you've got someone who's a little bit wanting to trip you up, kind of thing, or they're having a bad day. They can completely ruin the whole event for you. So always end, if in doubt, someone asks you a question you don't know, if in doubt, say, that's a great question. I'm not really sure, actually. Let me do some research. Or do you want to have a coffee afterwards? Let's have a chat about it. And just take it off the stage, because, you're not Yoda. You know what I mean? You're not the big G upstairs. We don't know everything. So we need to sometimes say that we don't, and that's a skill in itself.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And I think being able to hold the room, even if you don't know the answer, is a huge skill, because people expect, as you're on the stage, you must know it all. And sometimes you just have to say, well, actually, I don't. I think it's also quite interesting being a speaker from the perspective of, I find that it helps to be really transparent about audience engagement. So I spoke at Upreneur in 2018, and it was a great experience. But I had learned from other speaking events that people do love coming up to you afterwards, and they love having a chat. And I'm quite introverted. And so I openly said in my talk on the stage that I can stand here and I can talk in front of all you people, that's great. But afterwards, I just need a little bit of hermit time to gather my thoughts again. And then, if you see me and I look like I'm busy or I'm in the toilets or something like that, just don't come up to me. Like, come up to me when I'm sat at the table or I'm sat at the bar with a glass of wine or I'm having a coffee. Come up to me then, because that's when you're going to get the most out of me, and that's when I'm going to be really able to answer questions and have a conversation. As I'm going into the toilet and desperate for a wee after being on stage for 35 minutes, probably not. All I want to do is do the business, wash my hands, have 5 minutes where I can go, oh, great, I didn't fall over. That's awesome. You know, I think it really, you have to be quite transparent with people and quite blunt around, you know, when are the best times to talk to a speaker. Otherwise, you end up, you know, I've been at these speaking events where I've been sat there for 2 days as a speaker, and people have come up to me again and again. And I think, oh my God, I've literally for the last, you know, 23 hours been talking to people.
Yeah.
And now I'm done. I'm cooked.
Yeah, it depends on where you get your energy. I'm certainly more extrovert than you, I think. But even I've only ever met one person in my life that's completely extrovert. Everyone else it's a sliding scale. So I'm a little bit introverted at times. If I've done a whole day presentation skills, for instance, I will go, if it's in Leeds, I'll go, I can get home pretty quickly, or I'll go back to the hotel room, and I have to watch about an hour and a half of really bad TV. Just something like Come Dine With Me or Police Interceptors, something really naff on TV that just allows my brain to sort of kick back in, and then I'll get up off the sofa or off the bed or whatever after that, and I'll carry on the evening. But I need some time for my brain to come in, because it's hard when you're on show for 7 hours a day. You know what I mean? Yeah, it is a tough one, but you can politely say no to people, I guess. But you know,
but you don't want to, I never think that you want to say no to people, because I always appreciate, like, when I was going to conferences and I would be the person who'd wait until everybody else had asked for the selfie or something, because I was just like, oh God, well, you know, I don't want to ask a question, look like a complete idiot.
Yeah.
And so I'd wait and wait and wait, and then you'd see the speaker and they're just like, I'm just shattered. And one of the things that I started doing was I would wait, you know, I'd see the speakers with these huge long lines of people taking selfies, and I'd walk past and say, hey, I'm going to go and grab a coffee, would you like me to bring one back? And I found that got me more conversations with speakers, because they were so like, oh my God, yes, please. Because you never get away from the speaker table. You always end up kind of stood there, and you want to talk to as many people as possible and be really polite and help people. And so I found that just offering them a coffee, or do you want me to grab you a Diet Coke or something like that, meant that I could actually have a conversation with them as a real human, because they were like, oh yes, you know, just anything that I can just drink or eat now, because I'm not going to get time later. And I know that now when I'm at conferences and people offer, you know, to go and grab me something, I'm always so appreciative, because I know that I'm probably not going to get away from the table or anything. And you know, it's not because I don't want to, it's just you want to be good for people and make sure that they get their money's worth.
That's a really good tip. Yeah, definitely. It depends what kind of conference it is, isn't it? I'm guessing if you got a sales conferences, they're probably pretty hardcore, aren't they? Sales people.
Yeah, a little bit. It's very
really want to chat to you the whole time, and you know, I suppose it's funny. It's like when I do my little bit of work in schools, like they'll never ever have a question for me ever. Like in the last 25 years. You know, I can count on one hand the amount of questions I've ever had. But they might, as I'm packing away, you might get a young person sidle up to me and say, can you just help me with this? You know, and you kind of get that, which is lovely. And some conferences are like that. Public sector conferences are quieter than private sector conferences, I find. So it just depends on which kind of thing you're at. But yeah, you've got to be yourself. You've got to be approachable. I'm never rude to people. I'll always talk to someone, but I'll always find a place to hide afterwards, I'm sure, just to get some energy back.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on today. Seriously, this has been gold for everybody who's listening. I know that they're going to take it away and think not just about how they can be a good speaker, but also how they can be a kind speaker, and make sure they're focusing towards the audience as well as, you know, their own goals and gains. Where can people find you if they want to get good, which I notice you have trademarked, very jealous of, if they want to get good at work or at speaking or just getting contact with you, where can they find you?
Sure, yeah. You can go to my website. It's leejackson.org, leejackson.org. Find me there. I've even got a little special offer for your listeners too.
That's exciting.
So if you go to leejackson.org/podcast offer, you can get my little online course for half price. It's called PowerPoint Surgery, and it's how to do slides properly, because it's how to stop death by PowerPoint. You can get that half price. It's only 20 quid, so you can get it for 20 quid instead of 40 or whatever it is. So there's a little deal there. And lastly, I do a podcast too, which is not the reason you invited me on, which is nice of you.
I try.
And so I launched that a few months ago. It's called Get Good at Presenting, where I interview speakers and just ask them similar stuff to what we've done today, but I ask them, how do we get good at presenting? And it's great for business people. Anyone have to stand up and do that. So that's kind of me, leejackson.org. That's me. And it's been lovely to chat to you, Jess. And I'm sure your listeners love your podcast. You're a great person to chat to. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. And there you go, guys. If you are interested in learning to get good at presenting, make sure you go over, hit subscribe, and take a listen. I'm certainly going to. It's one of the things I'm always looking to improve upon, but that doesn't mean I want any unsolicited invites in my inbox. I know. As a sales coach, I shouldn't say it, but I just do. That way nobody's disappointed when I write back. I'm like, actually, I'm okay for the minute. So if you are interested in getting good at presenting, make sure you go over, hit subscribe, give that a listen, and obviously go ahead and take a look at that podcast offer as well. So it's leejackson.org/podcast offer. And if you've enjoyed the episode, obviously, you can always head on to social, tell us what we did well. And if you would like to give us any unsolicited feedback about snort laughing, great jokes, anything like that, then you are more than welcome to too. And I will see you in Monday's episode. Have a great weekend.